fill out the form, and then Lola and some other people will be contacting you. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't want anybody to feel like we need to ask you personally, like, hey, JD, I think you would be great running AV. Would you do it? If there's anything that you think you can do, just step up and do it. That's the best way to make this happen, okay? So please do that. All right, so let's get to our questions. We have 5 candidates. The questions tonight are always going to be asked in the same order. So we actually went alphabetical. So Tracy will go first, Bradford, right? And then we'll go in the same order, answering. Every candidate will get to answer every question, but for different amounts of time. So this first question, actually, though, everybody gets the same amount of time because it's just kind of an intro question. So, where am I at? Please take 2 minutes to introduce yourself. Tell us what your epiphany was that made you decide that Dan Patrick needed to be replaced, and then share what made you decide that you were the one to do it.
I'm going to stand up from here. My name is Tracy Bradford. I am a mother. I am a wife. I am a volunteer. I've been an activist with many of you for a long time. I have been down in Austin since 2011 at every session. And I would say the first time I ever knew there was a problem with Dan Patrick was actually when he agreed with pre-K. The first session they were down there. I don't know how many of you remember that, but he actually commented that when the governor listed that as a top priority, he said the governor deserved it, therefore they were going to move it right along. When the epiphany came for me to run, after watching year after year and being sometime even on the receiving end of games being played, whether it was not passing grid legislation, whether it was even today I saw where he's trying to claim that they have passed good, solid legislation to protect our girls and women in sports. It's this constant misrepresentation, lack of leadership, and actually, he legislates by poll numbers. And when you look at what happened in 2019 with the mental health legislation that he fronted for Greg Abbott, which was nowhere near a priority for us, and then coming into 2001, when they didn't stand up for us on anything, we knew this has to change, it has to stop. So that's when I was approached to do this. We prayed about it, we talked with family members, we talked with wise counsel, and you know what? It's time to change. And we cannot take this anymore. Our state cannot take this anymore. We are followers, not leaders, and that is not where we're supposed to be. So I'm actually very excited to be a part of this and be running. And I hope that you will consider me as your next lieutenant governor or vote for me.
Thank you. Todd, you're next.
My name is Todd Bullis. I'm a Christian, abolitionist, 10 kids, 7 we adopted out of the foster care system. It's the greatest joy of my life, and also the most difficult. The reason I decided to run is I was talking to Jeff Leach one day, as a few sessions ago, and he said that he was the chair of the committee of House Bill 896. 896 was the bill to make abortion illegal. It was the #1 legislative priority in Texas at the time, and he told me that he got the chair on the condition that he does not let it go to a vote. Of course, it's Dan Patrick who decides who gets the chair. He said that if he breaks ranks and allows it to go to a vote, Abbott would veto it because they knew it would pass. Because the precinct chairs and the people want abortion to be a crime. They want it to be illegal. Texas Right to Life, Jeff Leach, Alliance for Life, all oppose making abortion a crime. They just want to regulate it. All right? So I believe the Republican Party is a biblical party. Its platform, its planks, its legislative priorities are Christian, and that's why I can support it. But I can't support the rhinos that are destroying the party. The grassroots people are looking and going, what are our leaders doing? How do you get a good Baptist young man to become a liberal in Texas? You get him elected and send him to Austin, right? So I decided to stand up and actually quit telling people to stand up and just do it. So that's why I decided to run, expose the rhinos, and thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you, True Texas Project.
Well, howdy. Howdy. My name is Daniel Miller, and I am a sixth-generation Texan. I'm a husband, a father, by trade a technology consultant, but many of you probably know me as the Texit guy, because in 2005, I founded an organization called the Texas Nationalist Movement, dedicated to securing and protecting the political, cultural, and economic independence of Texas. And through that advocacy, just advocating simply for Article 1, Section 1, and Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution, it has led me to realize that we've got a serious leadership problem in Austin, Texas. You know, as we go and we look at these various fights that we have all engaged in, whether it be in various planks of the Republican Party platform or advocacy on other issues like Todd just talked about, abortion. When we look at that, what we see time and time again is bait and switch. We have campaign conservatives, and we have people that govern like Democrats. So at the beginning of last year, I started getting a lot of questions about whether or not I would challenge Dan Patrick. And I never wanted to run for political office, but there's one thing that I have always done, and that is I have answered the call to service for Texas. That culminated in an open letter by grassroots organizations from all over Texas saying, Daniel Miller, run. Challenge Dan Patrick. Help us secure the border, abolish property tax, end unconstitutional mandates. Get rid of the rhino. And so I declared that I was going to enter the race so that we could dump Dan Patrick. And I must say, I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're all going to have here tonight. Thank you for having me.
Just some housekeeping real quick. Can y'all just sit in alphabetical order? That would be great. Tracy, and then...
I'm not moving.
Keep it warm for me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We good now? Okay. All right. So my name is Aaron Sorrells. So what got me into this and my epiphanies and everything? Well, I'm a business owner. I'm a father of 3 boys. I've been married for 17 years. And what I saw as a lieutenant governor, that when Greg Abbott ruled like a tyrant, did nothing to put him in check. As a legislature, he could have stopped those mandates. They are not lawful, and he didn't, did he? He joined right in. And in fact, even when Abbott said public facilities can't have mask mandates anymore, Dan Patrick still required COVID testing and mask in the Senate. That is the man we are trying to replace. The same guy we're asking why he didn't get vaccine mandates done in special session. Well, maybe because he's vaccinated, boosted, and he had all those same rules on that Senate. So you think he's going to protect us? He believes in them. And what happened with me was 6 months ago, I walked into a Cook Children's facility in Fort Worth, where I do live, with an 11-year-old boy with a broken foot. And Cook Children said, put your mask on. And I said, I have 2 medical conditions. I've already had COVID. I can't wear a mask. And by the time you're done taking care of my son, I'm going to be in the hospital next door because I know how long hospitals take. And they said, no. I said, go get another nurse. They went and got 3 nurses. I said, okay, now let's get the doctor. Let's get the administrators. They came back. They pulled me up this close. And they said, we're not denying you service. They tried to whisper it, and so I stepped back and said, you're not denying me service, just to make sure that was all on cameras in case I needed it. And they said, no, you're choosing not to wear a mask. So that's why I'm in this, because I watched the hospital say nothing about vaccines. They only wanted to control over me. And I do not comply well. I did not put mask mandates on my employees. I have never done vaccine mandates. And I sure am not letting the government tell me what to do when it comes to how to protect my son. So that is why I'm in this race. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Got a heck of a good-looking group of Republicans in here. My name is Zach Vance, and I'm a kind, caring, compassionate, freedom-loving, God-fearing Republican. I'm a big tent Republican. To be upfront and honest with you guys, you and I agree on 90% of issues. There's really one big issue that we're not coming together on. But outside of that, I am with you guys. Ronald Reagan said it himself. a person who agrees with you 20% is not 20%, or 80% is not 20% your enemy. They're your friend and your ally. You and I agree on about 90% of things, but I'm not a conservative Republican. My epiphany was I'm a veteran, and I was lobbying in the 86th legislature for some veteran issues, and I truly saw how little Dan Patrick really cares about us and wants to make our lives better. Dan Patrick is not a rhino. I don't think Dan Patrick's even a Republican at all. Dan Patrick is in the party of Dan Patrick. He just do what the poll numbers say. He tries to keep the biggest voting block of people happy. And outside of that, he doesn't care anything about you. It's just Dan Patrick. Why am I good for why do I think I'm the right person for this job? I'm just a kind, caring person, and I love people, and I want to make every single Texan's life better. There's so many issues out there, there's so many things that people need in Texas. Public education, our police, our property taxes. None of those issues will be taken care of if Dan Patrick continues to win. Somebody's got to take him down, and I think I'm the perfect person to make that happen. But we have a great group of candidates here, and I think any one of us would do a hell of a job.
Okay, the legislative activities, are you hearing that? Okay. Sounded funny to me. There we go. The legislative activities of True Texas Project fall largely under my responsibilities. So I would like to hear from each of you, what are your top 3 priorities if you are elected? This could be something you want to pass, it might be something you want to eliminate, it could be a rule that you'd like to see changed. Whatever you see as your top 3 issues when you're in the Lieutenant Governor's office. And we start with Mr. Bullis. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is it 2 minutes? Is it 2 minutes?
I didn't look.
Yes, 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Thank you.
Can I please have the clock started back?
I started.
Well, the number one thing would be to bring justice and mercy to our land, which we need to make abortion illegal, equal justice for all. So that would be the first thing. We need to take care of the gender modification and secure our borders, right? If we don't do those things, God's not going to help us. We really do need God's help. If we just do what's right and biblical, God will help us. The Bible says that. It says that if you humble yourselves, you repent, and you follow Him, He'll heal our land. That's the answer. That's the only answer. We do not want to be the lesser of two evils party. We don't want to be better than the Democrats. We want to do what's right. So that's what I would like to do. And I'd also like to squeal on all the rhinos and what they're doing in the back rooms.
I love that. Let's rat out the rhinos. I love it. Well, look, here's something we have to understand. We're all sitting up here as Republican candidates. And the delegates go to convention every 2 years, and they tell Republican office holders what they want them to do. It's called the legislative priorities and the platform, right? And so we have these candidates, and they sit under the Republican flag, they wear the jacket, they proudly say they're Republican, but they disobey the will of the people who cast their votes for them. So number one priority is get the legislative priorities passed 100%, not 25%, not 50%, and that means digging in and being willing to go all the way and shut down the Senate and the House until the priorities get done. Because we have to honor our commitments to the people who put us there. So that's obviously number one. Number two for me is to finally, once and for all, give the people of Texas their rights under Article 1, Section 2, and place a question on the ballot that asks Texans this: should the state of Texas reassert its status as an independent nation? Yes or no?
Yes.
Let's get the debate going. Let's have the conversation. Let's have the vote. But beyond that, until we secure our border, we're going to be suffering under a public safety, a public health, and a national security crisis. So helping the governor legislatively to secure the border and stop the invasion, if I only get 3, that's it.
All right, right, so I would actually agree, legislative priorities need to go first. However, it is the question of what we would like to see done as our top three. So it's my top three. First one, child gender modification is ended immediately. It is child abuse, it is ridiculous, and our own party is funding it. In case y'all weren't aware, we have the most child gender modification facilities in the state of Texas, and Dave Feeling, Greg Abbott, and Dan Patrick have been paid now $2.1 million in order to keep those open. You want to know why we're against Dan Patrick? There's your one of them. So that's got to end immediately. Next thing I want to see is my priority, eliminate property taxes. It is immoral. We have too many out-of-staters coming in. It is nothing against the out-of-staters, but they're bringing our values up. And as native Texans, we're being pushed out of our homes because of property taxes, especially the retired community, the lower income, lower middle class. That's got to stop. It should not be happening. It's immoral. You cannot tell yourself you're a free society if you rent from the government. They might as well take the own box off because we don't own anything. So that's got to go, and I want it done day one, session one. So the top 8 legislative priorities, and if property taxes is not on it, it will be right next to it. That has to go. The plan I'm backing can be done in 2 to 3 years transition, and we can actually own our property. The rest of it is about shutting the government down and stop letting them spend too much. That's the real problem, right? And then the third one is securing the border. Because it's not just an invasion, it's a humanitarian crisis. And if you can allow that to go on, you are complicit in it. And we cannot, you cannot fix a humanitarian crisis by continuing to encourage the behavior that's causing that. So we have to shut the border down, we have to protect our citizens, and we have to stop what's going on at the border. Those are my 3 main priorities. But of course, obviously, there's a lot more. We have a lot of problems in Texas, but that would be where I would start off. Thank you.
So the number one issue for me is property taxes. We can definitely get them lowered, but for me, if you're over the age of 65 and you've been in your home for 10 years, I want to give you your home. That's possible, but just getting rid of it across the board for everybody, not possible. I want to end the reappraising of your home. So if you buy a new home, that appraisal will stay the same forever. And I want to reset appraisal values back to 2020 before the pandemic, before they skyrocketed. I also want to do an in-state, out-of-state tuition for home buying. So if you're coming from California, New York, you pay a 20% 20% tax on top of the price you're offering on that home. Texans can't buy homes anymore. They're way too expensive. In order to level that playing field, we got to start charging people moving from out-of-state more on their homes and the reappraisals. The other big thing is getting people insurance. The big block of our property taxes is people who use the emergency room that are uninsured. The hospital charges that to the city charges that to you. Getting people more insurance would lower our property taxes. If we did all those things, property taxes would go down significantly. The other thing is teachers. We have to start paying our teachers more. A poll just came out that said 66% of active teachers want to leave the profession. That would devastate our public school system. We have to start paying teachers more. We have to start hiring more teachers and get public education back on track. The last thing would be the border. We have to think outside the box on how to solve this crisis at the border. We have to figure out ways to stop getting people to come here. We're not drawing them. Mexico is becoming so bad, these people are wanting to leave. They'll go anywhere. They'll die trying to cross the river just to get here. We have to figure out ways to make Mexico a better place, and we can do that through our policies. That alone will be a huge difference in Mexico. I know it.
So my top priorities would also depend if we have a governor who is actually going to want to pass the legislative priorities. Because you do have the first 60 days, that governor we go by what his emergency items are. But for me, as a delegate, I take these priorities personally because we work on these priorities and then we give them a checklist to our legislators. And when I look at those priorities, with the border security, we have to take care of that. It's our sovereignty. Common sense demands this. We have to work on property taxes because, again, we've got a spending problem. Even when we talk about how we're going to solve property taxes, until we deal with the spending problem and the waste in Texas, this is going to continue. I don't care what program we have. But most of all, the most important thing to me is, yes, gender modification. That is something we started working on in 2017, and I know most of you know the story. We went down there office to office, and our conservative legislators told us they could not pass that legislation because it was too controversial. So protecting children is now too controversial. And I can tell you right now, none of these issues will matter if we don't pay attention to what is happening to our children in schools. They are being divided with critical race theory. They're being attacked on their own identity. And they're being taught that a circle is just a different kind of square under social emotional learning. That's no joke. They are even being groomed now, just like a trafficker would groom a child, because they're actually finding teachers grooming children who they think need to be transgender. And the people getting fired for that are the teachers that are reporting it. So for me right now, all of these issues matter, but if we don't train our children and we don't protect our children, we won't have a future, because they won't know to vote for these liberties. Thank you.
Okay, the next two questions deal with the number 1 and number 2 top concerns Texans have every time a poll is done. And you'll each have 90 seconds. Did you get that, Susan? They'll have 90 seconds to address both of these questions. Fran will ask the second one. The first issue is the Texas border. Daniel Miller, we'll start with you. What are your plans to address the danger and expense of the tens of thousands of illegals coming into Texas every month?
Yeah, we have to begin looking at it as it is. It's an invasion, right? June 6, 1944, 160,000 Allied troops land on the beaches of Normandy in a great invasion. We have that many crossing over every single month from across the border of Mexico. So we have to treat it like it is. Number 1, first and foremost, we have to finish most of the sections of the wall, enough to make it strategically sound. Number 2, we need to redirect the money that's being spent for traffic patrols by the DPS 30 miles from the border and fully militarize the State Guard and put them on border security duty. We have to treat it like a national security problem, and we got to get manpower, because if the federal government won't do it, it's up to us. Texas officials should be protecting Texas citizens, period. And until we seal that border, it is an existential threat to Texas. So those are the two major issues that have to be done. But the other part that we have to address is this, is we have to end the magnets. No more public money to people who are here illegally. We put a stop to it. And if that means we have to start our own version, the Texas version of E-Verify, and punish employers that hire them, so be it. But it has to stop now.
All right, so border is bad. We talked about that a minute ago, right? So what you do need to do is this. We need to finish the wall. The wall's not enough. If you finish the wall, there's still lots of areas where the wall can't cover, right? So on top of that, you need to get the State Guard involved. You need to have proper rules of engagement. State Guard is not big enough. We're going to need more. We're going to need to also encourage state militia, and we're going to have to bring them in to be involved also. And yeah, that dirty word that everybody likes to talk about, that's how this country was founded, was militias, okay? So the militias can be involved. The next thing you need to do is you need to fill the river up. Amen. The river has not been filled up. It's not just causing a problem for trafficking across there. The border towns are desperate for clean water. Because that water is so low, they are struggling. So it's not just about the border and that, it's actually about our own citizens being affected by the fact that Mexico is like 5 years behind on filling up the water from their side, okay? The next thing we need to do is we need to turn all the DOT buses around. This is our freeways, this is our land, and they need to turn their butts back and go right where they came from. And as far as I'm concerned, Texas pays more money than the United States gives back to us. So you know what? That's not their land, it's our tax dollars. That's our state land, and if they don't like it, I can wall their butts in and have them fun trying to get back in, because that's what has to happen. And then the next thing is we get off the sheriff's backs, and we let them deputize and do anything they need to do to protect their counties until we can.
So I'll tell you what should be happening here, what should have happened. Not saying it's ever going to happen, because it is really the federal government's job to really put an end to this. So we went into Iraq for weapons of mass destruction. Fentanyl kills thousands of people a year. That is a weapon of mass destruction. I don't know how we could go to Iraq and not go into Afghanistan, or go into Mexico the same way. We went into Afghanistan because of 9/11. Fentanyl kills 2 9/11s worth of people in America every single week. I don't know why we're not sending the full force of the United States military into Mexico to go door to door and kill the cartel like the rats they are. That is what should have happened, and it should have happened a long time ago. We wouldn't be going through this right now if they would have done that. Instead of going to Iraq and Afghanistan, we should have gone into Mexico. The other thing, how's the cartel make their money? 2 ways. They smuggle people and they smuggle drugs. What would happen, say it's 50% on each one. What if I took 50% of your income? How long would you last? Not very long. We have to figure out a way to take half of that income, and half of that income is through drugs. We have to change the way we treat drugs. We have to put a more emphasis on addiction treatment and getting people off of drugs, not just saying, no, you can't do drugs. We have to start allowing people to not go to jail for drugs. We have to end the war on drugs in Texas and in America, and you'll cut off half the cartel's money, and they won't last long after that.
So when we do recognize this as an invasion, the lieutenant governor's job would then be legislatively, you want to be sure that funds are there to support this, but you also have the opportunity to legislate the authority to do this, and that would be using an interstate compact, which gives us the opportunity to work with other states that have also been threatened along the border. There has been legislation for an interstate compact for the last 10 years. We hand-delivered it to Governor Abbott the very first session, and Senator Bob Hall files it every year, and they file it in the House, and it never moves. But then that would allow the states all along the border to work together. The other problem we do have is the trafficking. You've got trafficking coming across the border of humans who think they're coming here to get a job or that they would just work to pay off their debt. These traffickers coming with the cartels, they're making up to $14 million a day. And most of this is sex trafficking. So I want you to think about this. Why are we not using, Texas has RICO laws. Why are we not treating cartels, first of all, as terrorists? Why have we not done this? And when they come across the border, why are we not nabbing them for this and then prosecuting them under RICO laws? We also want to stop, if they talk about the magnets. We were down there and watching these NGOs who are getting anywhere from $500 to $4,000 a head. Let me tell you, they're pulling right in, walking right across the border, going there and being sent out across the rest of the country. So we need to strip their license. Sorry.
That was a whole bunch of good ideas, right? And good things that we could do and should do. The federal government really knows what they're doing. They're weakening Texas, right? They're tyrants. We should not allow the tyrants to reign over us, right? There's a doctrine of lesser magistrates that need to be enacted by our governor and lieutenant and representatives. And they need to take control of the situation. As bad as everybody thinks it is, I believe it's way worse, right? I believe that our Republican leaders know exactly what's going on, and they're part of it. They see the sex trafficking. They know. I believe they're profiting from it. Either politically, financially, it's way worse. And the Bible says that godly men need to watch the gates. Godly men need to stand up and to protect the innocent. Right? That's what we need to do. And we're not doing it. We have 70,000 pastors in Texas, over 30,000 evangelical churches. They're pew warming. They need to stand up. We need to bring back tar and feathering is what we need to bring back to Texas. Right? Not the pastors, but the politicians.
I'd like to see that legislation. The second top issue Texans want addressed is election security. What can Texas do to secure our elections, and how will you make that happen as Lieutenant Governor? Aaron Sorrells, you will answer first, and each one of you will have 90 seconds.
I can figure out how to stand up here to help. Okay, so elections. First off, does everybody realize we do not have to follow the Secretary of State? Does anyone know that? Did you know your own counties can go in like they did in Potter County and actually change back to manual voting? You don't need the state government's approval. So the first thing we do to fix elections is we get our counties to do their job of standing up and getting their power back, because that's how you really solve that problem. Stop depending on the state government to tell you how to run your elections, and sure as heck the federal government, because they have no rights there. But what we need to do is we need to go to manual voting, Probably something like ink, so like they do in a lot of countries so that you can tell they voted. We need voter IDs. I would like to see all the voter rolls purged. If we have to re-register for our driver's license, I think we should have to re-register for our voting rights. It's the most sacred thing we have. It should be secure. So we need, like I said, so we need to ban all electronic voting. Anything electronic can be hacked. There's so many ways we can solve this problem. We need to increase the penalties. What we don't do is pass SB1 election integrity and then during special session go, whoops, oh, we found out it went to a misdemeanor. Oh, we didn't know. Oh, Briscoe Kane changed the bill and everybody assumed he's a conservative, so he wouldn't have done anything wrong. That's our legislature. You just assumed he fixed it? I'm glad I elected you to assume what's in bills. We have that problem a lot. So we don't allow that. We go back and we actually get real election integrity done. We start enforcing the things on the books, and we make there be severe penalties, because if you can mess up our voting system, we don't trust our government. If we don't trust our government, we are where we are now, right? There we go.
So yeah, I completely agree with Aaron. I think we have to increase the penalties. Lowering the penalty this last session, that means the lieutenant governor doesn't even read the damn bills. He just sends them off. Increasing the penalties is going to keep people from doing it. But I think what's going on through now, I think they're doing a hell of a job purging the rolls. They're making a lot of people re-register, and then when you have to mail it in now, so it's pretty tough to get re-registered. Making people have to show your driver's license now when you apply for a mail-out ballot. That's a good one. No more drive-through voting. I think they're doing a really good job of securing these elections now. I think everything is riding on Abbott and Patrick to make sure. I think Trump put his foot down and said, you need to make sure elections are secure in Texas. The only other thing would be the voting machines. I do support a forensic audit of the machines. I think Texas is pretty secure, but just making sure that everything is on the up and up, I think would be the best thing. I think they're doing a really good job now, so we'll see after this election goes, but I think pretty much everything they did besides lowering the penalties, I think they did a really good job.
The Allison Amendment that was put on during the session, Dan Patrick said that they did not know about it. They found it because they went and searched for it. That's not what happened. Thousands of irate grassroots activists knew what happened and burned down their phone lines, and that's when they came out and tried to make the change, and then you had the Speaker of the House saying he will never fix that. So aside from the fact that we did, when you listen to me, you think, wait, do you not understand what we asked? You took it from a felony to a misdemeanor. That there are so many things that we can do, like precinct-only voting. You can have watermark ballots. We definitely need to get away from electronic voting. Paper voting, we actually listened to a cybersecurity expert the other day, and they were asked this direct question. They said, if you want secure voting, it needs to be paper ballots. I believe we want to secure our most precious right, which is the vote, with paper ballots. We also need to elect our Secretary of State. We are one of the only states that appoints a Secretary of State through the governor, and the Senate then approves it. So there's a great start right there. But we also want to make sure that with not just precinct voting and not just you purge the voter rolls, but there are a list of things that still need to be done to safeguard this voting right. And the thing too I want to talk about, we go back to the children real quickly. If they're not being taught about liberties, we're talking about all this and how to get them to vote and how we want to secure a vote. They need to know what a privilege this is. So we need to make sure that they're learning about the liberties so they will want to vote. Thanks.
So this is another topic that I believe is way worse than we understand, okay? First of all, anybody that wants to register and it goes to Austin and they approve it or don't approve it, but they don't tell us. So they can approve, they can do all they want to do, we don't know about it. Every single election machine can be accessed, even though they say it can't, by a modem, right? Wireless. They can connect to them. HBO did a big special about it. Nobody's talking about it. But the first thing that each machine has to do when they turn it on the first time is it connects wirelessly. They use standard computer components in these machines. They don't make new components. They use existing components to make these machines, right? I love the one company, Dominion, right? I believe in dominion. God tells us we should take dominion of the land, right? Who's taking dominion of the land? That's the question. Christians should be taking dominion. So we definitely need to go back to paper. I don't care if we use machines, they can check the paper, right, to see how it's going. But we definitely need to make sure that every single person that votes is legally able to vote, right? It needs to be paper. It's a much bigger process, but the federal government and our state government know what they're doing, and they're taking away our rights.
So as I said at the very beginning, I'm a technology consultant, and let me be definitely not the first person to say it here, but electronic voting machines are not secure in the least. Let me make it clear, electronic voting machines are about as insecure as you could possibly get, because here's what I know. Everything can be hacked. Everything. So that being said, I believe that elections cannot be too secure, period. And if that means we have to eliminate the electronic machines out of the equation, so be it. Watch the Scots go to an independence referendum in 2014, full-on paper ballots. You know what? They had an answer by the next morning. With an 85% voter turnout, I think we can do all right with paper ballots. That being said, there's some things that need to be done. And I go back to something that Tracy talked about a moment ago about we have RICO statutes here, organized crime statutes. But guess what is not included in the RICO statutes? Election crimes. And we know that there are conspirators who get together for ballot harvesting, for ballot stuffing, for hacking the voting machines, for doing all these things. And when they get popped, maybe they get investigated, maybe they don't, but they don't get prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So I firmly believe that every election penalty at a minimum should be a state jail felony, period. Because at the moment you remove the confidence in our electoral system, our constitutional republic is dead.
Oh, I thought I skipped you, but I didn't. Okay, very good. Okay, so those have been kind of general questions, big, broad topics. We're going to get a little bit more specific. And so for the next group of questions, the first person to answer will get, let me make sure you're going to get 1 minute to answer. But you guys, if you have stuff to add, you're just getting 30 seconds, okay? And then we'll rotate through, okay? So this one's going to start with you. Good. All of us know hard workers who have lost jobs and pensions due to vaccine mandates. Governor Abbott's executive order is worthless and being ignored. How do we help Texans keep their jobs and continue to support their families amid the COVID craze?
So I'm running on a platform of 100% pure freedom. I do not want another single person going to work and saying, all right, well, I guess I'm out of here if I have to get the vaccine. The Lieutenant Governor should have pushed Patrick to have a special session to end the vaccine mandates. I do not believe anybody should be forced to take a vaccine, especially when you can still get COVID and still pass it to everybody else. If it's just something protecting you, definitely shouldn't be forced to take it. We should have had a special session. We should have sat down and passed legislation that ends vaccine mandates. We should have done something, not just a piece of paper with a governor's signature on it. We should have had a full special session and ended it.
Which would have been the responsibility of the lieutenant governor to hound the governor every day, because he was the one that had to call the special session. We also, as Texans and Americans, need to stop thanking them when they give us our rights back. We have to stand our ground and not move on this issue. Those executive orders are worthless, and we cannot be dictated by those. And if you read the fine print, a lot of times in those orders, they did nothing to begin with.
Well, I want to talk about my wife for a second, because she told me that if they come to our house and mandate that we have to vaccinate our kids, to defend our family with my life. And I said, well, I need to get some better guns. These mandates are wicked. They're not biblical. They don't honor God. And all these people that lost their jobs, it's so bad.
federal coercion to businesses where they come to you and they say, take this jab or you don't have a job, means that if you're a woman and you get pregnant, if the federal government orders your employer to force you to have an abortion, that means it's on the table. Or for me, if they force me to get hair implants or a toupee, right? Or I'm going to lose my job. But that's what we're looking at. And the lieutenant governor and the legislature failed miserably. We have to support our employees. I'm copacetic, guys. Yes, sir. No, I'm good. Other than the fact I'm a bit embarrassed. It's not the worst spill, but buddy, what a dramatic end.
At least everyone will remember you tonight, Mr. Miller.
Say again? Sorry?
At least everyone will remember you tonight.
That's true. Question, are you going to dock my time later for that answer?
I already paused
no
it
problem.
because your 30 seconds was done.
Okay,
I was
good.
waiting on you.
Sorry, Aaron.
On my turn now? I'll just kidding.
You ready?
All right. Yeah, are we good?
Okay.
Okay. So vaccine mandates. Well, first I said I've never done it to my employees because as an individual owner, I don't have that right to control you. And I listened to 2 lawyers last night talk about how there's nothing in the Constitution that protects us. Really? I'm sorry, did we outlaw slavery? Because when a business can tell you what to do 24/7 to your body, they now own you. And that equates to slavery. We outlawed slavery. They don't have that right to tell me what to do, and I don't have the right as a business owner to tell you what to stick in your body. That's the problem with this.
All right, our next topic is one of my favorite things to talk about. It is property taxes. So for a long time, Texans have been promised for years that our property taxes will be brought under control. And yet every year they do nothing but go up. And every legislative session, somebody rolls out a property tax reform bill and then says, look what we did, aren't we wonderful? We lowered your taxes. So tell us what your specific plan is. You've all said you support the elimination or the reduction of property taxes. Tell us what your specific plan is to help keep people from having to rent their property from the government. Tracy, we will start with you. You will have 1 minute and the other candidates 30 seconds to respond.
So again, spending problem. We have a spending problem, and we've got to. So we have a spending problem that has to be dealt with, or that none of these property tax, I don't want to say gimmicks, are going to work until we get control of that. We also have the problem with the high amount of property taxes being paid on the M&Os for the school. So what we do want to do is, there was a bill passed that would limit the amount you could spend, or appropriations. This is hard in a minute. And we just need to be reducing the property taxes by dealing with what's happening in the education and the expenses there. There's other ways to fund education, like the mineral rights. We can have leases on those. Because we can't have a good conversation, because every time we want to talk about lowering property taxes, we end up discussing the education, the cost of education, and people think you want to, you hate the children, you hate the teachers. So, in a minute.
All right, first of all, we need to throw off all federal regulations and rules that hinder Texas from being as great as it really could be, right? That's the first thing we need to do. The second thing I think we need to do is defund all public school system. All of it. It is wrecking the family. We need to, churches, homeschool, co-ops, private schools, that's who needs to teach our children, right? We homeschooled 7 kids. It's a blessing.
Hello again. There have been multiple plans put forward in the Texas legislature since 2013. 2013, George Lavender, state rep, introduced a plan to eliminate property tax. Russell Bennett and those guys over there that would scrap the 60-plus taxes, replace it with a consumption tax. Went nowhere. Moving right along, in this last session, TPPF released a plan, 3 stages, that would have ended in a 10-year phase out of property taxes. It went Nowhere. So what is this? This is a leadership problem. And we know the solutions exist. We just have to implement them. And thank you, John, for that. Both of us. Teamwork.
That's right. Teamwork makes the dream work. Okay. We're good. All right. So actually, eliminatepropertytax.com. Let me say that again. Eliminatepropertytax.com is the plan I'm backing. It's one he shortly mentioned there too. That's the plan I want to go with. It's consumption tax instead of sales tax. There's a lot of cities that can't survive off sales tax. We need a consumption tax that has a website that explains everything for you. The fact is, property taxes are immoral. We got to get rid of them. There's no more excuses for why our government doesn't take care of one of the things that everybody in Texas is sick of. So they've got to go immediately. No excuses. I've said it again earlier, day one, session one. I expect that bill on my desk to transition in 2 to 3 years.
So we chose property taxes when we voted to not have an income tax. It's either one or the other. You can't just say no to both. People are moving here by the thousand. Not everybody can homeschool their child, and we need to strengthen our public schools for those people that can't homeschool them. Texas schools need to get better. We need to better educate our students. I don't want, but property tax wise, just ending home reappraisals is the number one thing. We have to end our home reappraisals.
That was Todd.
Okay, this softball for you. It just ends up that way. Abortion is another top concern among most true Texans. While much progress was made with the heartbeat bill, abortion remains legal in our state. Todd, please take 1 minute to tell us if you support abolishing abortion with no exceptions, and if not, what exceptions do you make and why? And the rest of you will answer that in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to know.
All right, so God ordains life. Nobody is born or conceived without the blessing of God. Right? Abortion must be a crime. It must be illegal. No group of people has the right to decide what other group of people lives and dies. Right? So abortion, there's no exception. A doctor, what he'll do is he'll treat both people as a patient and try to save both. Sometimes one passes, right? And it's almost always the child. But we don't just have an abortion because there may be an issue, right? We don't treat slavery that way. If rape was legal, we wouldn't regulate it and say this is who you can and who you can't rape, right? It would be illegal. It's the moral, righteous thing. And the Bible's clear about child sacrifice. So a girl that wants to finish college, so she sacrifices her child so college will be easier, that's child sacrifice. It's wrong. God won't help us if we don't be obedient to him.
The legislature had plenty of opportunities to deal with the issue of abortion, to outlaw abortion. And even with this heartbeat bill, there was an opportunity the previous session to do this very thing. But instead, what they did was they said it was too difficult of an issue, and they didn't do it. And how many children lost their lives as a result of their inaction, including Dan Patrick? So the bottom line is what Todd said. Exactly.
Back to the legislative priorities. One of those was abolish abortion. Did we get it? No, we got the heartbeat bill. You know what the heartbeat bill is? It's a lawyer's way of trying to get around the rules. Roe v. Wade is not law. States' rights overrule. We don't have to follow Roe v. Wade. Plain and simple. Why did we do heartbeat bill? Because it was going to go to the Supreme Court. Oh wait, we did the Supreme Court anyway. And you know what? Now it's messing with standing law. And Gavin Newsom and the left have already said when standing law gets modified in this country, they're going to use it to go after gun manufacturers and other conservatives. We should have stood on our Christian values and morals and ended abortion like Texas asked.
I am a Christian, and I am 100% against abortion. I wish it would never, ever, ever happen. But the biggest platform for me is freedom. If I don't want the government telling me I have to get a vaccine, I don't think the government should have the right to tell somebody they can't have an abortion. I see it as a big government issue, small government issue. I want small government. I don't want the government in my life saying you have to do this, you can't do that, or you must do that. I want every woman to know that abortion is not the option, but I don't want to say no.
the only woman up here who's had 6 children and adopted 1. And as a Christian, my question to you is, when was Jesus viable? We need to abolish abortion, but I also would like to make sure that we see the men that are part of this be taken into account as well, not just the women.
Amen.
Yes.
Okay, to solve the shocking discovery of porn and CRT in school libraries and classrooms, Governor Abbott wrote a letter. What other responses might be appropriate towards teachers and school boards that allow these explicit materials in the schools? Mr. Miller, we'll start with you at 1 minute, and the others will have 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's funny because in that book sitting right there, I wrote that when Greg Abbott was Attorney General, he talked about and bragged how he got up every day and sued the Obama administration, and his strategy, as I call it, was tweet, sue, lose, and repeat. Right? And so now he's graduated because he can't sue. He's just going to write tersely worded emails and letters. But here's what it boils down to. There are criminal statutes on the books right now for people who provide pornography to minors. There are statutes on the books, and the question that I have is, why are these DAs not prosecuting these people? When it is found, because essentially what's happening is they're grooming these children. Right? You've seen the material. We don't have to describe it here. But that's literally what's happening. So what we need to do is we need to remove the ability for local DAs to have some sort of choice as to whether or not these things are prosecuted, and prosecute them as child sex grooming like it is.
So the real problem is this. We keep letting our educators have all this social skills. And Dan Patrick went on Twitter and goes, I told Fort Worth ISD it was banned. Well, then do something about it, Dan. You're on Twitter? Really? That's the solution for the lieutenant governor? So the fact is we need to go back to education being about the basics. Math teachers didn't go to school for psychology. They went to teach math. We need to go back to the basics. We need to go and get rid of all social emotional learning out of schools. Go back to what we're supposed to be teaching. And then we don't have to ban any more programs because it's all banned. That's the solution.
I'm with Aaron on this. I think teachers just need to teach their subject and teach it well. I think this is the biggest issue with this would be history class. I want kids to know what happened in our past, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and especially the ugly so we can learn about it. When it comes to things in the library, I don't know about you, but if I saw I never even stepped foot in the library when I was in school, so I don't think these kids are really searching out books in the library. And I think if every kid has a cell phone in their hand, I think they have more porn in their pocket than they do in the entire school. I just want kids to be taught what they need to learn.
This is the same governor that asked the Health and Human Services and the CPS if child modification or sex change for children was child abuse. So that same group told him, oh, of course it is, but yet then 2 weeks later had their front page, their website celebrating transgender. So this is what we're dealing with, and I agree, you've heard some great ideas here. It is pornography, and if you right now get a copy of the reading list by the American Association of Librarians, nearly every one of those books is about transgenderism or somehow related to pornography.
Again, this is a problem that's way worse than we really realize. Way worse. The school unions, the liberals have control. When I go to political meetings, there's school teachers, liberal, it's just unbelievable, right? If you're a Christian, I call you to repent and pull your kids out of public school systems. The worldview that they get opposes your worldview, and they spend more time with that worldview than they do yours.
Okay, Aaron, we will start with you on this next question. How would you address the issue of local DAs not prosecuting some crimes and letting murderers out on low-level bonds? You have 1 minute and 30 seconds for the rest.
We have out of control DAs, we know why. The Democrats are funding them. And I'm really getting tired of my attorney general, my lieutenant governor, and my governor saying, well, it's just the way it works. No, it's not the way it works. We have a judicial system for a reason, and if the DAs are out of line, then we need to figure out the loopholes they're using and close them down. Because that's the problem. We are allowing these guys to get away. We're allowing out of control liberal judges to rule, and we just, our current leaders just accept it. And that's the problem in Texas across the board with everything. Our leadership in Texas just says, well, it's all we can do. Put their hands back in and turn around and walk away and say, I can't help you out anymore. Same thing with these DAs. Paxton's been whining about it all week. You know what? Then go do something about it. And that's what leaders do. They figure out the solution and they solve that problem. But they're not doing that. So I don't know the exact full loopholes because I don't understand how the DAs are overriding the Attorney General of Texas. So we need to figure out where those loopholes are. We need to shut them down and then we handle it from there.
Houston has an epidemic of activist judges and district attorneys. Just either the day before yesterday or yesterday the day before, Houston constable came on and said that these judges are finding not probable cause and just not even filing charges. They're having to refile these charges. We need to figure something out the legislature can do. First off, they got to be voted out. That's what they were pushing this press conference, is vote these people out in Houston. But we need to have some kind of legislation that says that if somebody keeps continuing the cycle and you drop those charges first and they come back in, there has to be trouble.
I know, I was like, where's he going?
So one of the loopholes is the DAs have incredible immunity that needs to be dealt with. The other thing is it's up to us. We elect our DAs, and we need to be holding them accountable. There was legislation that we did try to get passed because human trafficking, they're only prosecuting those cases at about 19%. So there was legislation that we tried to get passed that would give either co-prosecution or the Attorney General could bring their, I'm losing my words. They could come alongside and prosecute those cases and the DA fought it.
Okay, really? This is an abortion issue. Because if we don't protect the least, everything else is open for game. Everything. And God hates the hands and the people and the worship and the songs of those who don't bring justice and mercy to the land. And we get the leaders we deserve. We need to stand up and be obedient, and God will help us through all of this stuff.
Republican legislators bought the bail reform lie, and so we get guys out on cheap bond that go on to kill police officers. So if you want to know what we got to do to close the loopholes, number one, we need to take a lot of the discretionary language in Code of Criminal Procedure and we need to make those things mandatory. Number two, we need to make sure that it is much easier to impeach a judge or a DA or frankly any public official, and that means constitutional ability to recall. And then number three, final thing, really quick, is we need to make absolutely sure that we institute mandatory sentencing for violent crimes.
Pay attention, Brandon.
Wake up. Okay, the governor and the legislature tell us that the issues with the power grid have been addressed sufficiently. Is that true? What is your plan to strengthen and protect the Texas grid and from another massive failure? And does it include adding additional green or renewable sources of energy? Zach, we start with you at 1 minute, followed by 30 seconds for the rest.
Yeah, so I think we did a really good job of weatherizing the power generators themselves, but what's being pushed off is weatherizing the gas providers. We need to make sure that if gas providers go down, there needs to be severe punishments. Because the gas providers made so much money this last winter storm, they paid off Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick to not fix them. They want it to happen again. We really need to make sure that the gas providers are fully up for hot, cold, rain or shine, that they're pumping gas to the generators. Outside of that, I think they did a good job. I think Greg Abbott had a lot riding on this most recent winter storm. I think he did as much as he could for the generators, but outside of that, I think they kind of just left the other people hanging, saying, "Oh well, if it happens again, I get another check for a couple $1 million." We just need to make sure that the gas providers are weatherized.
I've worked on this issue for 10 years. We need all hazard protection. One of the first things I would do would be bring back Senator Hall's strong legislation to stop this and to fix the grid, but what concerns me is the renewables, and we're spending $22 billion between federal and state subsidies. If they can't stand on their own, they don't need to be here.
I believe we need to throw off all regulations the federal government puts on Texas, and we need to start helping empower other states, right? We need to be independent and be able to not worry about our carbon footprint regulation and allow us to do what we need to do. We know how to take care of ourselves. Federal government, they love seeing us shut down.
What Tracy said about Senator Bob Hall, absolutely. He's been working those issues, and Dan Patrick has not given him the respect or this issue the respect that it deserves. So absolutely, we've got to resurrect Bob Hall's bills and get them done. But here's the other thing. Just the other day, Speaker of the House Dave Phelan promised to bring back green energy subsidies in this next session. So as Lieutenant Governor, guess what? We get to tell him to pound sand and tell him that Chapter 313 is better than Judas Iscariot, and he could put that in his pipe and smoke it.
Green New Deal needs to go bye-bye. All subsidies for green energy, gone. They're not only green energy, they're being controlled by China, and we're dependent on China so that they can get carbon footprint for their own pollution. We need to be building actual power plants, like nuclear, natural gas plants out in Midland so they'll stop flaring. They're about to shut down a lignite coal plant in Marshall, which is going to cost $2 million and 50 teachers their jobs. What's the problem? Green new energy subsidies, the push by everybody in the federal government to take over the Texas grid. It has to stop.
Okay. Historically, the Senate has done a better job than the House in passing Republican priority legislation. But too often, the Senate bills are stalled in the House and die. Do you think that the Lieutenant Governor can play a role in influencing legislation in the House? What specifically would you do as Lieutenant Governor to improve that situation? 1 minute for Tracy and 30 seconds for the rest.
So yes, they do pass out legislation, but keep in mind, and a lot of times it's not the full robust bill, or they pass it late enough so that by the time it gets into the House, it can't make it all the way through. So there's gamemanship there too, and then Dan Patrick can say, look what I passed. I do think, again, you use the bully pulpit. You have your power that you serve as the president of the Senate. I do think that those three work together, and absolutely they make deals behind the closed doors. So I have to believe when Dan Patrick can whip the mental health bills through there, he can certainly have the power that you can certainly have the power to negotiate and work getting other legislation passed. But just remember, when you see the Senate, we see it over and over. In this last session, there were 5 different bills, 2 were priority bills. They're not full, strong bills. And they weaken them and pass them out, and then he takes credit for it.
Our current representatives, right, they oppose the people. The Lieutenant Governor needs to expose any leader, any rhino. You know, like Dan Patrick, when he says things like, Greg Abbott's the last word on COVID, I almost kicked my TV. Like, it just blows my brain up. So, look, we need somebody that'll do what's right? And listen to the people, honor God.
Poor TV. And I said it earlier, here's the bottom line. We know that the House is where conservative bills go to die. And as Lieutenant Governor, you have to be willing to grind everything to a halt and say, none of your bills pass, declaring San Marcos the mermaid capital of Texas, or dealing with Andy Murr's mustache, or any of that other garbage until the priorities get done. And let me tell you something, nothing moves until the priorities get done, period. And if that means 10 special sessions, so be it.
So I've made that very clear, the same thing, that day one I expect SB 1 through SB 8 on my desk, and nothing will move, the same as Daniel. We agree on that. Because if you can't get the people's priorities done, then you don't care about the people. But here, you want transparency? You want to know what I'm going to do as Lieutenant Governor to make sure you see when the House kills our bills? I promised everybody I will wear a camera in every single one of my suits. You want transparency? You want to see the dirty games? You're going to see it with me in office. You can put them on our police officers and our elected politicians and get our tax dollars need to be exposed. That's how you make Dave feel uncomfortable and make him do what he needs to do.
So I think the legislature should work like a good marriage, and that's with compromise. You have to give a little to take a lot. Whenever you just say mine, 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 no, no, no to you, everything shuts down. That's why Congress and the Senate and federally are at a standstill. We have to throw the left a bone, and then they'll give us more in return. You give a little, you take a lot. That's the best way to do it, I promise you. You have to compromise. Compromise is the only way.
I think it's my turn. Okay, Daniel sort of stole my next question in one of his recent remarks, so maybe we should just have him not answer. No, I'm just kidding.
Were you? That's my thing.
In the 87th session, Chapter 313, the tax code that allows school districts to give large tax abatements to corporations, primarily green energy corporations, it effectively died because it was not renewed, and that's primarily thanks to the Senate that never did take up the House bill that was passed. So conservative Republicans believe that this program is bad for Texas, and we even have a plank in our Republican Party platform to abolish it. Now we find Speaker Phelan and others talking about trying to renew it and bring it back in the 88th session. What is your opinion about that? Should it be renewed or should it be left to die? Todd Bullis, we start with you at 1 minute and the others have 30 seconds.
I have a confession. I own a Tesla. I call it a Texla, and I love it. But it should die. That should die. We need to be energy efficient with the resources that we have, and we have abundant resources, right? So if we allow the whole green energy movement to kill our oil and our gas, it just devastates Texas. It ruins Texas. It takes everything that we have and substitutes it with what China will provide us. And it's just wrong. So even though I have a Tesla, and I love it, these green deals gotta go, right? These regulations, these carbon footprints, allow us to help the rest of the union, whoever wants help, by providing energy.
Snowpocalypse 21 happened because the government put its thumb on the scales and upset market forces, driving baseline power production projects into the dirt, right, in favor of windmills and things of that nature. Much like the Texas Enterprise Fund puts its thumb on the scales of the market and needs to be abolished, Chapter 313 and like subsidies need to go away. Let's let the market forces determine which one is the better power generation, and I'm pretty sure we already know that it's not going to be wind and solar.
It's funny, tax abatements keep coming up everywhere I go. It's funny, it's almost like people don't like the tax abatements in this state, but yet our legislature's done nothing about it. So, yeah, I mean, as far as the subsidies go, subsidies gone. We are a capitalist society. No big corporations should be getting subsidies. As a small business owner, I don't get a subsidy, and I'm not too, quote, big to fail. So we need to stop providing these subsidies. We need to end all these. If you can compete, then you need to compete. Plain and simple. That's the way our government works. That's the way our government's designed. That's the way our state should work.
I'm completely against corporate tax incentives. Giving a corporation with billions of dollars, millions of dollars in tax incentives just to come here. Businesses should come here to Texas because Texas is amazing. We have great people that are willing to work. They only do this, they only redo it every single year so these companies get millions of dollars in tax incentives, and then they'll write Greg Gavin and Dan Patrick a big fat check. Say, hey, thanks for saving me the money. That has to stop. They're giving corporations millions of dollars, $1 million per job created. That's just not worth it.
One of the perks about the 313 is that they would create jobs. Well, also you can negotiate out that particular benefit. So why are we doing this at all? We don't want tax abatements, but just understand this. if Dave Phelan's already floating that out there, it's gonna come back under a different name. So just know it's not gone, just be watching for it to come back under a different name, and we're gonna have to smack it again.
Okay, are you guys enjoying this? Like, I think 30 seconds is good. My attention span might only be 30 seconds, so that's been fun. But we're done with our real questions. We're going to ask all yes/no questions at this point. So everyone will answer at the same time
This
with
looks
either
suspiciously like hazing.
with either red or green. And so if it's a question that's important to you, this is when you get them on record. Okay? So it'll go fast. The questions will be asked quickly. Fran's going to ask them. They won't be able to, pause and look at their neighbor. How am I supposed to answer? Okay? So, but before we do this, I just want to say that this has been fun for me. Like, I have learned something from all of you. Like, it's been really interesting. Even my 80% friend, it's been great. So, let's keep going.
I am dyslexic, so,
Good excuse.
All right, are we ready?
Yes.
Here we go. Will you actively push the GOP priorities as defined in the state GOP convention by the delegates? Very good. Number 2, do you support, okay, hold them higher. Everybody has green for yes on that one. Do you support outlawing the mutilation of minors via sex changes? Thank you. Will you reverse the third gender option on Texas birth certificates? Will you go one step further and ban the social transition of minors, such as name and identity changes at school? Will you add an extra tax on money transfers going into Latin and South America?
I don't know.
That's a good one.
Okay, here's the next one. Are you willing to have state law enforcement arrest federal agents for violating the Constitution? That's a unanimous yes. Okay. Will you commit to
Designating.
Thank you. Will you commit to designating cartels as domestic terrorists? Will you pursue E-Verify programs in Texas? Will you utilize the Texas National Guard to secure the border? These questions are too easy, don't you think? Would you use your bully pulpit as Lieutenant Governor to help discontinue the practice of appointing Democrats as chairman of committees? Would you support legislation to require special elections to recall legislators that flee the state to avoid doing their jobs? And last question. Do you support legislation that would require drug testing for welfare recipients?
Okay, so Fran thought those were too easy, but again, this is to get them on record. They're supposed to be easy because when you get to Austin, all of a sudden it becomes hard and confusing. Well, what about this and what about this? Well, no, you just told us this was your answer. So, and it was interesting. I think when we asked these same questions at our gubernatorial forum, everybody was the same across the board on every answer. It was not that way tonight. So, interesting. Okay, so at this point, we're going to give you each 1 minute to tell us why we should vote for you. So, you may have noticed these candidates are kind of a lot alike. What makes us choose you specifically? And I don't know who we're starting with. I didn't read it.
We started with me to begin with. Start with me.
I don't care. Go ahead first.
Tracy's until there.
I know I probably don't have many votes
Homeschool
here,
mom, this is what
if
happens.
any. But I just want you to know I'm doing this because I truly care about you. I love every single one of you, and I'm doing this for the right reasons. I just want to make Texas a better place for everybody. Things have to change, and they're not going to change if we keep electing the same people and over again. I just want you to know I value you, I appreciate you, and thank you for coming out tonight. And I will do my absolute best if I get this opportunity. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
When I started this, it was about fixing my family. It was about the government coming in and messing with my business, my personal rights, and ultimately my children. And when you mess with my children, we are done. That is my family. You don't mess with people's families. And that's what our government has done. They mess with us with vaccine job mandates. They mess with us with masks. They've told us that we're essential. And I'm not going to stand around and take it any longer. And that is why I decided to run. But we need to remember one thing as Republicans, if we want to get it back. JFK would be a right-wing radical right now. That is how far left we have gone as a Republican. We do not compromise because that's all we've done since before I was born. No more compromising. We stand on our values as Texans and as Christians and as Republicans, and we say enough is enough. And that is why I'm running, because we need leadership in Texas. We need people to put their foot down and say, I don't care what you think, it's wrong, and you're going to do it, or you're not going to be there any longer. And this is on all of us, not just us up here. We need to make a difference. Vote March 1st. Vote them all out.
It's important to understand that this is not necessarily about what we would consider smaller battles, but there is a much larger battle that's looming right now. I firmly believe the next 100 years of Texas history are being written over the next weeks and months. And the question is, how do we want future generations to remember us? Are we going to be the generation that lost Texas, or the generation that showed people what Texans are truly made of? Are we going to be the generation that stood up and honored the spirit of Travis and Crockett and Bowie? Or are we going to be the generation that is remembered as the ones who were devoid of the spirit of Texas? I'm running to be lieutenant governor because I firmly believe in Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution that all political power is inherent in the people. And folks, it's long past time in this larger ideological and spiritual war that we show them exactly how powerful we are. And we do that by changing it all from the State House to the schoolhouse. I would appreciate your consideration and your vote. Thank you.
He almost has my vote. To me, this is a moral issue for a moral people. Who is going to take dominion of the land? Are the LGBTQ? Are the Muslims? Are the Christians? We know who's taking over the school boards. We know what's happening in our schools. We know what's happening from our representatives. The Bible calls us to take dominion of the land. Godly men and women need to take dominion. We need to rise out of the pews and be obedient to what the Bible says. It doesn't matter if we're less evil than the Democrats. Right? God will help us and change everything. I can testify in my life. When I was not obedient to God, I suffered and my family suffered. My text.
Like many of you, I've been fighting this battle for nearly 20 years. And we have never seen a time like this. We are at war. We are at war spiritually. We are at war with each other in this country. But I am also excited because I believe for such a time as this. And when we decided as a family to take this charge, and I'm talking when we started 20 years ago, when my husband would homeschool, while I would go down to the Capitol and walk those grounds. I know those halls, I know that process, and I know what this battle is about from top to bottom. And I'm ready to fight. I've been fighting. And I know what matters, but I can tell you this, it's time for all of us to get our families, our friends, everybody, because I believe we've never had a better chance to turn this state around than right now. When we go to vote on March 1st, you can early vote if you like, but when we go to vote on March 1st, we have the opportunity to change Texas. Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to say thank you to all 5 candidates. I think this has been very interesting. As Julie said, we learn things from everybody, and I think if you haven't already made up your mind, it's a hard choice. We've got 5 good choices up here. So thank you to the Dallas group for hosting us tonight, and thank you to all of you who came out. I encourage you to hang out, talk to the candidates, get your picture taken in front of the True Texas banner, post it on social media. And at the back of the room, Mr. Roy has yard signs we are selling for $10 for the pair with the little toppers, so you can remind people that voting starts on Monday, and that they can go to our website for voting recommendations. You can buy one or the other or both together, whatever you would like to do. Thank you for coming. Good night. God bless you all, and God bless Texas.